In episode 46 of the SOC Level 2 training series, we are going to continue with our malware analysis module, and we're going to be talking about dynamic analysis and debugging, right? So the concept of debugging, and I would assume that this is kind of like a continuation from the last video, obviously, which was the basic dynamic analysis. And sometimes you need to debug the tools that you are using, or you need to debug the results themselves, or something along those lines. Debugging is a concept that will show up frequently when you're using automation tools in general, or when you're creating scripts and things like that. And so this is part of the malware analysis module in the SOC Level 2 pathway of TryHackMe. And we have the intro, obviously, the need for advanced dynamic analysis, and this is the segue to get us into advanced dynamic analysis. The introduction to debugging, familiarization with a debugger, and debugging in practice, bypassing unwanted execution paths. And of course, the conclusion, we'll do some final thoughts, we'll do some review, and then you will be dismissed for the day. This room has been created by Myral Izafar. I constantly mispronounce that. I think this was actually the person who also made the last room that we were in. So obviously it's one of the staff members of TryHackMe, as you can see right here. And this is actually really cool because we can see all the different levels that are available to us over here. And I think I'm like around this area. Maybe might be even higher because I don't know what my individual points are, but for sure I'm up there. This is a developer that we have from Pakistan that works for TryHackMe. Their rank is 30,000. 301,000. So the lower this number is, the higher your rank is. The number of badges that they have, the number of completed rooms that they have, all of those things are kind of irrelevant because this person was good enough to actually get into the staff and start creating rooms for us to view. The created rooms that they've created, the macOS artifacts, forensics, advent of cyber, and very many other ones. So I don't know how to pronounce the username, but if you want to go check out the rest of the stuff that this person has created, Umairalizafar. I want to say Zafar is probably the last name. Ali sounds like the first name, and Umair. So it could be Umair Ali. That's probably the first name, and then Zafar is the last name. So Umair Ali Zafar. That's probably how I'm going to pronounce it. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I'm close. I might be right. I might be wrong. I might be kind of close. I feel like I got close that time. But anyways, that's it. That is the room developer for us. This is a subscriber-only room, which means you do need a paid subscription to do this, to actually go and access the virtual machine and the content and everything that's inside of this room. However, I will try to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to launch this from your own computer. And the tools that we end up using, more often than not, the tools that we end up using are open source tools that you can just go ahead and find and download and use them in your own environment. So I will say, just be careful when you're dealing with malware analysis, especially dynamic malware analysis, because it requires you to run the malware in order for you to do the analysis. So that's something that you always do inside of a sandbox environment or a virtual machine type of environment. And if you don't know what that means or how to set that up, watch the video prior to this one. So episode 45, where we go into the dynamic analysis basics, and you can understand how to create a virtualized sandbox type of an environment so your actual virtual machine does not get affected. If you're serious about your SysAdmin education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into dynamic analysis debugging. All right, so in the last room, we discussed what it's like to actually launch malware, run the malware executable, and then analyze it as it executes. And malware authors are aware of the fact that we do this. People on the defensive side of security will be doing stuff like this. And for the most part, when you're doing static analysis, you're analyzing the source code and its various elements, when you're doing dynamic analysis, you're actually going to run the code. And so what malware authors will try to do is they'll try to evade your detection techniques. And to do those things, they'll do some kind of control over the execution of it. So for example, there are some API calls that certain malware will make to detect whether or not it's being run inside of a virtual machine. And if it is being run inside of a virtual machine, then it's not going to do what it's designed to do, so that it doesn't, get detected, right? So that's one of the key things that authors of malware try to point out to detect, to see if they're inside of a sandbox environment or if they're inside of a virtualized environment, so that they don't give away their cards. They don't give away what their actual tactics are, so we don't detect it and we don't prevent it from taking place. They only want the malware to run inside of an actual live environment. So that's one way that an author will try to figure out how to evade our detection techniques, right? So we're going to be talking about what these authors are going to do to control their malware execution better to achieve their desired results. And the objectives are to learn the evasion techniques that are used to evade basic dynamic analysis, an introduction to debuggers and how they can help us control the execution flow of malware, manipulating execution flow at runtime by changing registers or other parameters, and patching malware to force it to move past the evasion techniques and onto the actual malicious content. So we're essentially trying to debug the malware so that we can make it do what it was originally designed to do, even though it's inside of a virtualized or a sandbox environment. That's kind of what we want. We want to see what this malware's intentions are. The prerequisites are the two the two static analysis rooms. So basic and advanced static analysis, and of course the basic dynamic analysis video. And these should be the last like 3 videos, or the last 3 or 4 videos that we did in this specific series for malware detection or malware analysis. The very last video was the basic dynamic analysis. I think prior to that was advanced static analysis, and then there was like a static analysis exercise that we did, and then there was basic static analysis. So you'll definitely see these in the titles of the videos prior to this one, and you can find all of that inside of the SOC Level 2 playlist. It would be the most recent videos that are inside of the SOC Level 2 playlist. So there we go. I've already completed the prerequisite rooms, and I've already recorded all of those videos for your reference. So let's move on. Everything that is done inside of security detection, or really anything that's done inside of the criminal realm, is like a cat and mouse game, right? The mouse would be the person that's trying to evade the detection or evading the arrest, and then the cat would be the people that are trying to hunt them down. And that's basically what it's like inside of analyzing malware as well. So malware analysts, which is us, they devise new techniques. We devise new techniques to analyze the malware, while the malware author, which is the attacker, devises new techniques to evade our detection, right? So we're trying to hunt them down. They're trying to escape getting hunted. That's basically what it is. So what we're going to be talking about in this section is reviewing some of the techniques that hamper our efforts, or they throw a monkey wrench in our efforts to analyze malware using static or basic dynamic analysis. When they want to evade static analysis, and in static analysis videos, we actually learned the techniques that we can use to analyze malware without running it. And malware a lot of times tries to look like a legitimate piece of software to evade the eyes of a malware analyst. And because we're not executing it during static analysis, the main focus of static analysis is to obfuscate the true functionality of the program. And the main focus being the focus of the person who's creating their malware. So their main focus when they create their malware is to evade our static analysis by obfuscating, by disguising the true functionality of the program until we actually execute the program. And these are some of the common techniques. So changing the hash values, when we've learned that we can just check on the hash value of a file against some kind of a database, and then we'll see that, oh, okay, this actually is previously a malware. They just renamed the file. And so now we can detect that hash value, the old hash value, the same hash value is the hash value of the malware. So what they would try to do is they would try to change the hash value by somehow editing the contents of the source code And a lot of times this can be done by adding a simple comment to the source code, and now the hash value completely changes. So when the malware's hash changes, bypassing the hash-based detection mechanism is the goal. And hashes can change even if one bit of the malware is changed, unless we're talking about context-triggered piecewise hashes or fuzzy hashes. So just adding a NOP instruction, which is a non-operation instruction, it could again be a comment, right? A comment has no operation value, and that it can actually change and defeat the hash-based detection techniques because the hash value now changes. Defeating antivirus signatures. So places like VirusTotal have a bunch of different antivirus vendors, and the antivirus signature and other signature-based detection often depends on the static patterns found inside of the malware, and the authors can change those patterns to try to evade those detection signatures from antivirus. And this is accomplished by general obfuscation of the malware code, and then obfuscation of the strings. So some of the strings, as you saw inside the basic analysis room, the static analysis rooms, and those videos, we see that the strings actually hold a lot of value for us if we can see them. So if they haven't been disguised or blocked out, we can actually see what the intentions of the malware are by just looking at some of the strings, because in those strings we have the API calls that the malware is trying to make. So when they obfuscate them, they disguise them, right? And then we can make sure that the authors that obfuscate the strings by decoding them at runtime, when we search for them, we may not find anything useful. So when it actually runs, it decodes those strings during the execution, the stuff that's been obfuscated, and the author might obfuscate important things like the URLs, the C2 command and control domains, and the API calls, any of those things, to avoid burning the infrastructure based on a single string search, which is a very basic search that we can do. Runtime loading of dynamic link libraries. We can identify what the malware imports while analyzing the PE headers, the portable executable headers. Malware authors often use Windows libraries, the loaded libraries or loaded library EX, to load a DLL at runtime, so they don't have to actually hard code it inside of their malware. They'll just call on those libraries to pull the functionalities of them so that their malware can still do what it needs to do inside of a Windows computer. When analyzing this malware statically, we might not see all the functions that it's linked to while analyzing the headers. So that's another thing that they can use to avoid static detection. And then there's packing and obfuscation. So packing is very popular because it's literally like packing the present. So think about all of the chunks of the malware that if you looked at it through static analysis, you could actually read line by line what it's doing. When they pack it, they usually pack it inside of a section that doesn't have a name, or the name is like, it might seem like a very common name. And so those names will, if it doesn't have a name, that's kind of like one of the loudest signs that, oh, this malware has been packed or this software has been packed. And if it has been packed, then it's a sign that it's malware. So when we look at a packed present, we can't say we can't actually see what might be inside it unless we unpack the wrapper and take out the present. And packers pack the malware in a wrapper by writing code that decodes the malware at runtime. So when you look at it through static analysis, you can't see what's going on unless you actually run it. So we can execute the malware, unpack the code, and load the actual malicious code into the memory and then execute it. And that's one of the ways that we can get past the packed malware sections. So most of these techniques are suitable for hiding in plain sight, but they can be defeated when the malware is executed while performing dynamic analysis, which brings us to the evasion of dynamic analysis. And so dynamic analysis, again, as a reminder, is when we run it, right? When we run the malware. And there are a lot of different tools that we can use to run malware and to look at what happens before and after running the malware. And it helps us identify whether the malware runs in a controlled analysis environment or not. So identification of virtual machines is one of the key elements. So they might backfire nowadays since a lot of enterprise infrastructure is hosted on VMs. And one of the favorite malware authors has been to identify that the malware is running inside of a VM. So it checks the registry keys or device drivers associated with popular virtualization software like VMware or VirtualBox, and such as the single CPU or limited RAM. These are other resources that can hint that the malware is being run inside of a virtual machine. And then if it notices that, then it's going to do a different execution and it's not going to actually do anything malicious so that we can fool the analyst. The timing of the attack, so the malware will actually try to time out automated analysis systems. So for example, when we execute it, it will try to sleep for a day using the Windows sleep library. After a few minutes, the automated analysis system will shut down, right? If there's no traces of malicious activity. Newer malware analysis systems can identify these attacks and try to mitigate them by shortening the time that the malware sleeps. However, malware can identify those mitigations by performing targeted timing checks to see if the time is being manipulated. And this can be done by noting the time of the execution and then comparing it with the current time after the execution of the sleep call. So this is actually very clever. It's basic. It's like a really, really basic piece, but it's very, very clever. So if they know that they're going to, the malware analyst is going to run the malware, and they're going to check to see what it's doing inside of the live environment. So they're going to stop the malware. So it's like you launch the malware, you run it, and then it doesn't do anything that it's supposed to do for a day, right? For a couple of days, let's say. It won't do anything that it's supposed to do, and it's under the assumption that we're gonna run some kind of a analysis software, some kind of a dynamic analysis software, and then we're gonna run the malware. And so if nothing happens during the next 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, during the next hour that we've ran the malware, if nothing happens, then we're going to be like, oh, okay, so this is not malware because we did dynamic analysis and nothing changed. And then you can kind of rest assured that it's fine, and then you release it into the production environment, and that's when you no longer are analyzing it, and then it can do whatever it needs to do after a few hours or a few days or whatever it is. So that's actually very clever, and it's not a complicated thing to do because you're just using the sleep library, the Windows sleep library, to pull it off. There are traces of user activity. So the malware will actually try to identify if there are traces of a user in the machine. So if very few traces are found, then the malware will decide that it is being executed inside a controlled system and take a different benign execution path. Traces of user activity can include no mouse or clipboard movement or keyboard movement, lack of browser history, no recently opened files, little system uptime, etc. So all of these things can hint that there's no actual user on this machine, and we're literally just using this machine to run the malware to see what it's going to do. It's very, very clever. These things are so freaking clever. Identification of analysis tools. So it can actually ask the Windows OS for a running process list using process 32, process 32 next, also process 32 first, process 32 next, or anything similar to that. And if popular monitoring tools are identified among the list of running processes, malware can take a benign execution path. So if procmon or procxp, so process monitor or process explorer, if either of those things are running, the malware can identify and switch to benign activities. Another way to identify this is by looking at the names of the different windows open inside of a system. So if the malware finds that olidbg or procmon is open in the windows, then it can switch to a different execution path, which is, again, very clever. These things are not complicated ways of avoiding detection. They're actually very simple ways of avoiding detection. It's just they're super creative and very clever. So by employing these, malware authors can make it difficult for malware analysts to perform static analysis or dynamic analysis. And malware analysts can use some tools and techniques to take greater control over the execution of the malware, helping them defeat evasion techniques. So malware sometimes checks the time before and after the execution of certain instructions to find out if it's being analyzed. What type of analysis technique is bypassed by this attack? Oh, they're asking for the analysis technique. So this would be, oh, my keyboard fell asleep again. I want to say this is dynamic analysis. So this would be basic, if I can type, dynamic analysis. Yeah, so they're checking to the time before and after the execution, and that would be done if we're talking about execution, that means that would be done inside of dynamic analysis. What's a popular technique used by malware authors to obfuscate malware code from static analysis and unwrap it at a certain time? And the keyword there is unwrap, so packing would be the answer to that. And cool, now we can move to debugging. The concept of debugging is usually associated with software programming and software developing, and it's basically what we do to fix a program and debug certain elements of the program that prevent the program from running like they're supposed to. And so the malware sample that's trying to evade detection or reverse engineering can also be considered a program that has a bug, right? So malware is malicious software, right? So it's a program basically, but it has malicious intentions. So if it's not doing what it's supposed to, technically that's considered a bug inside of that malicious software. It's not doing the thing that it was supposed to do. And so when we're looking at that malware as a reverse engineer, as an analyst, we need to debug it so that we can make it do what it's supposed to do. And interactive debugging becomes an essential part of advanced malware analysis. And the debugger tool is what provides us the control that's desired to monitor a running program more closely, looking at the changes in different registers, variables, memory regions, etc. And it also allows us to change the variable values to control the program's flow at runtime. For example, if it detects that it's being analyzed or whatever and it goes to sleep for a day, we can change that variable value to actually make it go, like make it run immediately, right? Which again provides us more control over what it's supposed to do. So we have different types of debuggers. There's the source level debugger that works on the source code, as the name implies. Most software programmers will use source level debuggers while writing the code to check the code for bugs. And it's a high level debugger compared to the other two options that we have. When we use this, we see the local variables and their values. And this is, again, something that's actually done by software programmers. So a source code debugger will actually look at your source code and try to detect errors or issues inside of your source code and help you debug those before you move into the later stages in the development lifecycle. So these are actually used inside of regular development and inside of regular software programming. It's just that, again, malware is malicious software. So we're going to use it as well to analyze malware. There's the assembly level debuggers. So when you have source code, you assemble it for various sections or blocks of code, and there's assembly languages and there's the assembly code itself. So when a program has been compiled, the source code is lost and it can't be recovered. So you have source code, you compile it, and now it looks very, very different. You can't find the source code. And in the case with malware analysis, literally the same thing. So we don't have the malware's source code, and then we have a compiled binary. So the assembly level debugger can help us debug compiled programs at the assembly level. And when we use this type of debugger, we often see the CPU register values and the debuggee's memory. And this is the most common type of debugger used for malware reverse engineering. And the debugger attaches to the program that has to be debugged and then executes it as per the analyst's desire. And then we have the kernel level debugger that are often a step lower than assembly level debuggers because they debug a program at the kernel level. So for this level of debugging, there are two systems that are actually required. One of them is the code running that's on the other system, one system is used for debugging, So one system is used for debugging the code running on the other system, and this is because the kernel stopped using a breakpoint. And then we can look at the next few sections to actually see what they're debugging, or how to debug the actual malware that we would be looking at. So how can we recover the pre-compilation code of a compiled binary for debugging purposes, right? Yes, or it's not how, my bad. So can we recover the pre-compilation code of a compiled binary for debugging? And the answer is no. So once the source code is gone, you no longer have access to the source code. Which type of debugger is used for debugging compiled binaries? And that is the assembly level. So this is it right here. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing. It's the assembly level debugger that is used for compiled binaries. And which debugger works at the lowest level among the discussed debuggers? And that would be the source level. So the source level debugger, I want to say that's the one that it's the lowest level, right? Work on the source code level which would be, oh no, this is the highest level. So, okay, I see the direction is the reverse. So kernel level debugger would be the lowest level of debuggers that are available. And there we go. So let's talk about the actual debugger. And now we have a virtual machine that we're also going to launch here. Some of our options for debuggers would be the WinDBG, or I guess WinDBG, Ollie DBG, IDA, Ghidra. We've actually used Ghidra previously. We're going to be using the X32 DBG and X64 DBG. I've already started the virtual machine. We can also connect to it via RDP. If you had access to TryHackMe as a paid member, you would be able to do this, but unfortunately, this is not available to people who are not paid members. And if you have a paid membership and you want to connect to it from your own machine, you would need to connect via OpenVPN to the TryHackMe servers, and then you can go ahead and connect to the machine itself. It's a Flare VM machine, which is not my favorite type of virtual machine, but this is actually designed for reverse engineering of malware, and it's the version of the malware analysis operating system that is native to Windows. My thoughts just stopped running for a second. I was like, why am I speaking so slow? Okay, so it includes all the tools required for analysis. To start, we can just go to Desktop Tools, Debuggers, and then just open this thing up, and then we'll see something like this. And so to open a file, you can navigate to File Open, just like any other application. And this is what it will look like when you actually have an malware that's opened. We're currently seeing the CPU tab in the interface, and we have to use X32 for 32-bit samples, X64 for 64-bit samples. So we are currently on this tab, the CPU tab on the far left that you can see right here. And this is what we're seeing right here, right? So this is basically what the debugger itself looks like. So in the bottom left corner, the execution of the program is paused because a system breakpoint has been reached. So system breakpoint reached, that's what it says right here, and the status is paused right there. We can control whether to execute one instruction at a time or the whole program. And that's kind of the key feature of a debugger, or the key feature of debugging in general. When you run the program one step at a time, one instruction at a time, just to see which instruction gives you the problem, right? And that's kind of the overall concept behind debugging, because you want to just see at which step of the whole process the thing breaks down. So the screenshot, we can see that there's disassembly in the middle pane, with the instruction pointer pointing to the next instruction executed if we start the program. So disassembly would be the middle pane, I'm assuming. And then it's right here. And if we click on it, it would move to this next line to keep running the program. In the right pane, we can see the registers and their values. We can note that the value in EIP is the address EIP is pointing to in the disassembly pane. So in the right hand, we can see right here, these are addresses, as you can see right here. So we can see that it's pointing to the address of it as if we were going there. Oh, I think this is what they're talking about right here, is the address that it's talking about, I believe. Yeah, so anyways, similarly on the bottom pane, we can see the stack view on the right side and the dump view on the left side. Okay, so I stood corrected. So this is the part that they're talking about when they say the address that it's pointing to. And so 147F would be the address that's right here. And so we're trying to find 147F, which is right here, the F147. That's the address that is pointing to right here. So this is the address on the right-hand side register, and then this is where we're actually at right now. And then it would move to F150, not like the Ford truck. And the timer showing the time we spent debugging on the right corner, which is what we have right here. Time wasted debugging. Let's look at some of the other tabs. So the breakpoints shows the current status of the breakpoints. Breakpoints are points where the execution of the program is paused for us to analyze the registers and the memory. A breakpoint on a specific instruction can be enabled by clicking the dot in front of that instruction in the CPU tab, and then it'll take you into the breakpoint. And this is the breakpoint tab right here inside of the upper menu. The memory map shows the memory of the program. And so that's the next step that we see right here. We can also see the call stack of the program, which would be the next button right here. The threads running the program are shown in the threads tab, which is right here. And then any handles to files, processes, or other sources that the process creates are shown in the handles tab, which is what we can see by clicking right there. So in the next section, we're going to talk about how to utilize this information for analysis. So in which tab is the disassembly view shown in that? And that would be the CPU tab. If a process opens a file or a process, where can we see this information regarding the opened file or process? So any other handles to files or are shown in the handles tab that we can see right at the very end right there. All right, so let's talk about debugging in practice. For this section, we're actually going to run the software and we're going to use the, CrackMe Arabel CrackMe a Rebel. There we go. Sometimes I have no idea what I'm reading. So crackmearebel.exe is the file that we're going to be debugging. So you click on open and then you select the file itself. So we see the file that we need to open. It attaches itself to the process and pauses before it starts. We can see that a blank command window opens in the background. This shows that the process has started out but was stopped by the debugger. Then this window might not open with all the processes, so just keep that in mind because not all processes might require a terminal to open up, a command line to open up. It'll depend on the user interface of the process. In the debugger window, we can see the familiar disassembly, the registers, the stack, and the other useful information. And the address might not always be shown as it is in the images as well. So what we can see right here, it may not always be shown necessarily. So in the debugger window, we have some features that can help us control the execution. And this is what we can see. So these are some of the things that can actually help us. So this would be restart, that would be stop. This would be the next step. This would be pause. And then this, I think this will just continue to play. This would be paused. This will take us to the next breakpoint, I want to say. I wonder if they actually show it to us. So let's see. So it says among these from left to right, we have the feature for opening a new file, which is that piece right there. Restarting the execution of the open file from the start and stopping the execution. The arrow key will execute the program until it is stopped or paused by some other program. Please do not press this button because it might freeze the program. If you did, kindly restart a program by terminating it through the task manager. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. When you click on this, it's just going to run. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is not the one that we want to click. And usually you don't want to do that anyways. You just want to go step by step. Maybe you'll run it on the first run through. In this case, we're not going to do that on the first run through. We're just going to go step by step. So then we have the pause option. The last two options are for stepping into and stepping over. Okay, that makes sense. The rest of the options are also useful, but for the scope of this, we're not going to be talking about it. So now that we know how to control it, we are going to execute the program using the arrow key. Only press it once. When we do that, we can see in the bottom right corner that the program status changes to running, then paused. Along with the status, we have the reason for pausing the execution. It says int3 breakpoint TLS callback. This means that we have hit a TLS callback and the debugger was programmed to break execution on TLS callbacks. So that's the piece that has stopped it from running. So int3 breakpoint TLS callback at this particular location. And so they pressed the arrow button. This is the piece that they're talking about here. And it ran and then it just automatically stopped because it's designed to stop, right? The debugger was programmed to break the execution as a TLS callback. In the debugger, we can set where to put automatic breakpoints on a program by going to the options preferences menu. And this is what the screenshot would look like when we choose different points as breakpoints. We can see that TLS callback and system TLS callbacks are checked. So we can see right here, TLS callback and system TLS callbacks in the settings options for the automatic breakpoints. So since these are often used as an anti-reverse engineering technique, we should be careful when navigating this TLS callback. Therefore, it will be prudent to single step each instruction while we are in the callback. We can do that by clicking the step into option that we discussed. After stepping into every instruction, we see the EIP moving to the next instruction and the values in the registers and the stacks change accordingly. After stepping in a few instructions, we reach a conditional jump instruction. in the pane, we can see that the debugger tells us that the jump is not taken. The registers pane shows that the ZF is set, so the jump is not taken. So right here, we can see right here. And so the jump that's supposed to be taken, let's see, it says jump is not taken right here. So the jump to D116E is the jump that's supposed to be taken, because we're technically here and we're supposed to be taken into this jump, and it says that the jump was not taken to D116E, which is this kind of like grayed out portion that we can see right there. So that jump was not taken. So if we analyze both of those paths, we can see if the jump is taken, it goes to the address D116E, which pops the EBP and returns. On the contrary, the current execution path where the jump is not taken takes us to address D1000. So if the jump is not taken, going to D1000 is something that I'm actually very curious about. Where would we see that? Oh, it's actually right here. So it's literally in the center right here. That doesn't zoom in. So this would be the section where it actually shows us. So on this line, this is the location that it's supposed to be at. It's supposed to go to D116E, which would be this piece right here. But if this jump is not taken, then this line will take us to D1000 right here. So that is where we can actually see that element. We can see what is on this address by double clicking on the address. So let's go there. Alternatively, we can hover over the address to get a glimpse of the instructions. The below screenshot shows the code where we follow the address, and we can see a few API calls like create tool help 32 snapshot, load library, get proc address or process address. If we follow it down further, if we are sure that this function call was intended and we wanted to return after the function was executed, we could step over, which will bring us back after the function has been executed. However, the function seems too important to bypass straight away. So this is what we can see right here. So if we actually double click on it, it'll take us to D1000. This is the address that we see right here. And then from here, we can see what it would look like and what the rest of the calls would be if it continued down this specific path. And so in this particular case, I can't see all of the API calls that they're talking about unless they're in here, and they're not. So the API calls themselves, text-wise, are not here. It could be that the specific codes for them are here, because API calls do have numerical codes, essentially, that are assigned to them, so we can kind of decipher them like that. And just to make the script itself or the software itself a little bit more lightweight, they use codes instead of the full API call. So the libraries can be used to evade detection for legitimate purposes, but we don't know that for now. So we can move along this path, and if we see a red flag, we just restart it again using the restart execution option. Moving forward, we see that the library being loaded is suspend thread. So where do we see that? Oh, right here, suspend thread. Right here, suspend thread, kernel. Oh, interesting. So maybe if we go over here, maybe that's what it shows us here. I don't think so. I was trying to see maybe we actually have that going vertically for us over here as well, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's actually interesting that it has it right here vertically going down. So kernel 32 DLL and suspend thread. That's so interesting that it looks like that. Okay, very cool. So the suspend thread API is being loaded. This TLS callback will suspend the thread based on detecting a running process like a debugger. The create tool help 32 snapshot helps identify running processes. This is why the program will freeze if we proceed with the execution. We can verify this hypothesis by moving forward along the code path. On verification, we find that it's an evasion code path. Therefore, we would like to bypass it. For that, we would like to take the jump in the start of the TLS callback. Let's start the execution and get to the TLS callback in the next piece. So the attached VM has a crackme in the directory. Now I actually have to run the software. So we are now going to come out of this fully zoomed in version that we have here, so I can actually go into that split screen and load our malware that we have over here. So the one that we're supposed to be loading, from what I understand, is which one? The crackme A rebel is the one that we're supposed to be loading inside of our little tool, which is going to be the, what are we using? The X32 DBG is the one that we're using. All right, so here's X32DBG. I opened it by just clicking on tools and then going inside of the debuggers, inside of the tools folder, and then I opened up X32DBG. For the intensive purposes of our exercise, I'm just going to open this up in a full screen so that we can get to see it a little bit easier. And then I'll zoom back in on this so we can look at the content a little bit easier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to also open this up in a separate window on my other monitor so that I can look at the content and be able to navigate this whole thing without having to just go back and forth between the content. Okay, so now that we are here, the question says to obviously load the, what's the name of the file again? It is the A rebel just by itself. So I'm going to do file and I'm going to do open and we're going to look for A rebel. So this should be inside of CrackMe A rebel, and that's what it is, desktop CrackMe A rebel. That's all it is. So this is the executable right here, and then there's A rebel 1. So we're going to just do A rebel and we're going to open this one right here. And there it is. It is now officially opened, and we can even kind of make this a little bit full screen to make that easier. So the first question says, in this CrackMe, there is a TLS callback with a conditional jump. Is this conditional jump taken? Write yes for yes or no for no. So what we're going to do is we're just going to press play. So system breakpoint reached is what it says at the bottom left right here, which is the pause status that we're in. So I'm going to press play and see if it's going to stop at that TLS callback. There we go. So TLS callback at CrackMe rebel, etc., etc. And so this is what it is right here at 1160. This is the TLS callback, and there's a jump that's supposed to be taken at 1160, and this would be the jump, I would say. And it says, is the TLS callback taken? So I would assume we press play again, right? And let's see if that actually does anything for us. Okay, so I had to use Task Manager to end it because it did freeze up on me, and then I restarted it, and I restarted the X32DBG, and then I uploaded the CrackMe A rebel into it again, and then I press play again, and now we have reached the TLS callback one more time. So instead of pressing this button, I'm just going to do the next one where it says step into. So let's see if we'd actually do it. So there's step 1, there's step 2. TLS callback is going to be at the, where was it? It was at 11,160, right? So let's see if it's actually going to take this hop that is supposed to take right here. So we will click on that and then click one more time, and it does not take the hop. It actually went into the portion and then it skipped past it completely. So it didn't take the hop. So the answer for this question right here would be a big fat N or no. Let's get to the actual question. So there we go. That's a no. Now the question is, what is the value of the 0 flag in the above mentioned conditional jump? So I need to restart it again. So I'm going to go over here and we're going to restart the whole thing, and I'll go from the very, very top. System breakpoint reached. Great. So now we're going to press play again, and it will read that TLS callback at CrackMe, etc., etc. So now it says, what is the value of the 0 flag in the above mentioned conditional jump? What we can see on the right hand pane on the far right are all of our E flags. So the 0 flag, I'm assuming, is this piece right here. Yeah, so it says Z flag, right? 0 flag, set if the result is 0, cleared otherwise. And the value of that is 1. So we can just go ahead and do that right here. And which API call in the mentioned sample is used for enumerating running processes? So now we need to find the API call for enumerating running processes. So there's a call that's being made right in the middle of the screen right here, get window thread process ID, and I wonder if that's it. So get window thread process ID. And that is not the answer. Okay, so it's used for enumerating running processes. This one retrieves the process ID. So I'm curious as to, was that get window thread process ID? Okay, I did spell it right. So at least that's not the issue. Okay, so let's see what it might actually be. Okay, so the other thing I can think of is to just kind of keep clicking forward to see if we can find anything. So we're going to get to the point where we had the hop. Let me kind of zoom in a little bit here so we can see it. So we're going to go to the point where the hop existed, which is right here. And then we're not going to obviously take that hop. So when we click it, it'll take us here. We have another call that's being made, create tool help 32 snapshot. So let's see what that does. So what does create tool help 32 snapshot do? And that takes a snapshot of the specified processes, the system processes, threads, modules, and heaps at a specific point in time. This allows us to examine the state of the system resources without interfering with their operation. Okay, so it looks at the processes. So let's see if that's actually the answer here. So create tool help 32 snapshot. Okay, that is it. Okay, so it is used for enumerating running processes, right? Because it takes a snapshot of the system's processes, as it says right here. From which Windows DLL is the API suspend thread being called? So from which Windows DLL? Now, from the screenshot that we have right here is the kernel 32 DLL. So that would kind of be my assumption that I would make. Create tool help 32 snapshot is also on this screen point. And so it is actually on our screen right here as well. So we do see suspend thread. That's right here, and then right before it we actually see the kernel 32 DLL. That's right there. So we can pretty confidently say kernel 32.dll would be that answer. Excellent. So that is the answer. Great. So now we can move on to bypassing unwanted execution paths. So this, it's been restarted. The execution has been restarted, brought back to the branch of code where we identified a detection invasion and the TLS callback breakpoint, which is this whole piece right here. So we are now back at the breakpoint TLS callback. Stepping a few instructions to reach the conditional jump, we get to the following point. So if we click on this piece right here, so stepping forward a few pieces, right, we get to the conditional jump right here. And so it does say that the jump is not taken. That's actually another way to find it right at the bottom right here inside of this little pane. So we see that the jump is not being taken at this point. In the previous task, we identified that the 0 flag was the reason for the jump not being taken. By double clicking ZF in the right pane, we can change the ZF to 0 because the 0 flag right here, right? So this is it right here. That was 1 originally. And so we can actually double click that and change it to 0. And now we can see that it's 0 and the jump is taken. This way we can bypass the unwanted execution path. If we step further or execute the program, it will take the jump and move to address D116E. What we did here is change the execution path on runtime by manipulating the registers. However, if we execute the sample again, it will again go to the evasion path unless we change the register. So if we wish to defang the binary, we will have to change it so that the evasion path is not an option if it is just run through double clicking. This is called patching. This way, after being defanged, we can perform dynamic analysis to reach our desired conclusion. So let's see how we can do that. We can right click on the instruction we want to edit to find the options related to that instruction. So we are still at the hop point right here, okay? So among these is the option to edit as seen in the following screenshot. So I can right click on this. I'm assuming that's where they right clicked on. And then you can go to binary and then you can go to edit, okay? So when we press edit, we see the following window. We have the ASCII, Unicode, UTF-8, and then you have the hexadecimal portion right here. And that's pretty much it. So in the lowermost pane, we see 7505 in hex, the opcode for conditional jump instruction. We can change this, change the JNE to JE. So where do I have that? It just says J right here. JNE to JE. This way the jump will be taken without us changing the 0 flag. Change the conditional jump to an unconditional jump. This way, the jump will be always taken regardless of the condition. So among those two options, the second one is better as it gives us surety for the jump. However, there is one more way we can edit the binary, and that is by filling the call instruction at address D1169 with non-operating, and as discussed in a previous, these are instructions that actually don't do anything. The screenshot below shows that we can fill the instruction with NOP by right-clicking, going to binary, and fill with NOPs. So instead of doing an edit, we can actually do fill with NOPs, and then it will take that piece, which is which one? Oh, it's the step, right? It's the step that is supposed to be taken because they're on this line. So they're not on the one with D11.6E, they're on the other one. So the instruction at D11.6.9 with NOPs, which is this piece right here. So those have been filled with NOPs. Once done, we can go to File, Patch File to write this file to a disk, and we can see something like this, that we can see a rebel, etc. And those are the patches. And then by clicking Patch File in this window, the debugger, so this is the Patch File button, the debugger will ask us whether to save the patch file. This is how it will look once we have filled it with NOPs. Notice that a single instruction has been replaced with 5 NOP instructions. This is because the size of the single instruction was equal to 5 NOP instructions. This is more visible in the above screenshot, which is what we can actually see right here. Where each NOP is mapped against its equal size opcode, and then we'll actually see it right here. So this would be the patched version of it, where we actually see that instead of that single line, now we actually have 5 lines that say NOP. We can see the CrackMe A Rebel 1 is patched, and this is how the same file looks when patched and saved. So that's what that one was. So now we've used the debugger to patch a file evading debuggers. What is it called when a binary's assembly code is permanently altered to get the desired execution path? And that is called patching. And that's the only answer that we actually had to do on this thing, so I didn't even need to go do that whole piece. But technically, we can just try it. So I'm going to restart again from the very, very top. And then this is the portion right here. So actually now I'm going to press play so that we can get to the TLS, and there we go. So this is the portion right here, and this is the one that they were editing. This is the one that they were just going to replace with NOPs. And so if I do that, then it should say, okay, is this what you want to do? And I'm just going to do that. And then there you go. Now it's been replaced with NOPs. And now technically, I guess if we actually ran it, it would probably, or we would need to save it, right? So this is the debugger. That's actually basically all it's doing. So what we would need to do is save it and then run it using a dynamic analysis technique. And then we would actually see what it's going to do as it's intended to do, right? So that was kind of the whole piece of this. So if I click this, it's going to say it's still running. It's going to be terminated. Do you really want to exit? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to close the debugger, and we're going to close this window. And I believe we are officially done. So are there any? No. Yeah, we're pretty much done. So this was cool for me because I have not done debugging specifically on malware, but I have done debugging on Python scripts because I write a lot of Python scripts for our community, for Hackaholics Anonymous. So if you are not a member, go check that out. But for the most part, I have not done any debugging on malware specifically. And that was actually very cool, that X32DBG, which is designed for debugging malware specifically. Is the one that I think it's open source, and it is something that you can just easily get access to, and it's a very fun little tool, or depending on your definition of fun, I'll say that, but it is a cool little tool, and it is something that thankfully we actually got a chance to kind of get an introduction to, and we're going to be doing more of this stuff when we go along to advanced dynamic analysis, which is going to be the next room after this one. So we've talked about the common techniques to evade static and basic dynamic analysis, the use of debuggers, using debuggers for changing the environment at runtime, and using debuggers to patch malware. And this is obviously not it. So we're going to go to anti-reverse engineering to learn more about these things. And I think that's going to be the next step inside of our SOC level 2, malware analysis. So this should be the next step inside of our SOC level 2 malware analysis, because we just did advanced or basic dynamic analysis. We've also done dynamic analysis debugging, and anti-reverse engineering is going to be the next element. And then we have maldoc static analysis, which is an actual exercise, like a practical exercise that we're going to use to wrap up the malware analysis module. And by doing that, by actually wrapping up the malware analysis module, we have officially wrapped up the SOC level 2 pathway of TryHackMe. So we have literally 2 more videos left to finish SOC level 2 in TryHackMe, which is very cool. I'm very excited. This is a big point for us. So thank you for hanging out, and thank you for going through this process with me. I really hope that this is actually serving useful to you. And hopefully you were able to kind of follow along with me and learn some cool things from this video. If you did get value from this video, and if you've gotten any kind of value from this channel, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, especially as we wrap up SOC level 2. And then we're gonna keep launching Pentest Plus videos every single Friday. I give away Python automations, obviously, and I do Python automation videos that will be coming out. What else do we have? We have the CYSA Plus that's going to be coming out. We have AI for cybersecurity that's going to be coming out, how to train AI to do your work for you, and how to use AI, how to manipulate AI to do a lot of crazy things, which is actually very, very cool. That's going to be happening. There's a lot of crazy stuff that's on the horizon. There's a lot of amazing content as we advance further into this world. I'm super excited about it. So I don't know about you, but I geek out and I nerd out over these kinds of things. So very, very excited about it. And I think you will also get a lot of value out of it. So if you have any questions on the video that we did today, or if you have any questions in general, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. There is, of course, the Discord chats that are available. So even if you join as a cyber supporter in Hackaholics Anonymous, it's $5. You get lifetime access to the Discord chats. And then at the very least, you'll be inside of the community. And then if you have any questions or anything like that, you can drop it in the community. And then either I will answer or some of our more advanced members will answer. And that's kind of what my goal is to build this thing out and get a really solid community available for people who are interested in cybersecurity, ethical hacking, pen testing, so on and so forth. So at the very least, drop a comment in the comment section below. But if you want, I would highly recommend you check out Hackaholics Anonymous and see which tier of membership is more relevant to you. And then based on that, you can go ahead and join Hackaholics Anonymous as well. So if nothing else, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. And of course, drop a comment in the comment section below. If you're serious about your CySec education and want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server, as well as early access to content, and the agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. And that is it for today. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I'll see you in the next video later.